Hey everyone, this is Kyle with Simulation Lab here in Brooklyn, New York. Back again with another 3D Studio Max tutorial using TyFlow. And just to start things off, I hope everyone is feeling good and healthy and staying in as much as you possibly can to avoid the whole coronavirus thing going on. So yeah, let's jump in. So today we're going to be looking at making I started making these gravity toys, which is they're kind of fun. We'll watch this one. So they're really simple. All they are is just um, concave physx shapes that are bound to like a spinning ring. That's what this is. It's just a torus knot basically. And then I just manually animated the torus knot to kind of rotate, and then the physics basically takes over. And it was just out of pure curiosity that I made this one. Um, and it's just kind of like a fun little exercise. It's really simple. So I'll show you how I handle the physics of the little physx shapes. Um, and maybe we'll do something a little bit different with this tutorial other than remaking this particular example. So let's jump in. Um, so my units, I got them set to centimeters. One unit equals 1. Let's do centimeter. Cool. Okay, and then we'll start by making an extended primitive. We'll do a torus knot. Toss that right in the middle there. Cool. And then what I might do is I'll just do something a little bit different for this example. So in this case, I'll do something, kind of just play with this until we get something that we like. Let's do 5, 1. Something like that. Yeah, it gives us like this kind of spring shape, which is kind of cool. So maybe what we'll do is instead of animating the torus knot to like rotate around, what we'll do is we'll have it static for this example, and maybe we'll use a force to push the little donut shapes up, and then they'll like spiral down towards the center, or maybe vice versa. Maybe we'll have them fall along the outside, so they go like that, and then as soon as they get to the middle, then they fly up again or something. I don't know. So we'll kind of just play around. Okay, so I'll add in a little bit more, a few more segments here, get it nice and smooth. All right, cool. And then we'll come back to this guy. First things first is we want to start to make our little donut shape. So it's just a simple torus. So we'll kind of toss that guy in here. Something like that. Cool. And we'll just drag this off to the side. And then what we're going to have to do is we're going to break this up, right? And I know I just zero this out for right now. I'll zero this one out as well. And then real quick, I'll assemble some of layers. So that'll be the outer torus. And then this one will be the ring. Oops. And let's pop this open. So I'll just hide that for now, and we'll work on our torus, or sorry, our ring. So I'll go ahead and toss an edit poly modifier on this guy. And the idea is that we're going to be breaking up the donut into separate shapes. And then later on, we're going to bind those shapes together using TyFlow. But for now, what I'll do is instead of a rectangle, select our little polygonal fence selection. And I'm just going to go ahead and break apart the donut. I'll break apart the ring into like 8 separate shapes. So go ahead and detach each one of these. Oops. Okay, so now that I have that all detached, so I have separate segments and I have my original ring. It's exactly what we want. So this is I'm just gonna change this to ring skin. And then we have that conveniently in our ring layer. So I'm going to just go ahead and turn that off for right now. Well, you know what I could do is instead of turning that off, what I'll do is I'll toss in a skin modifier on that. So we'll toss in the skin. And then under bones, I'm just going to add all of our separate objects. Cool. So now if I grab one of these objects and I pull it, the outer ring is skinned to it, right? So that basically acts as, basically acts as a rig. So each one of these components is like a rigged element that the skin is referencing. So that's cool. That's what we want. So now that we have that set up, I'm going to let's just grab. Oops. Let's grab these guys, and I'm going to toss them. Make sure they're zeroed out in the Z, and then we'll create a tie actor. And I'm just going to toss that in there and zero him out. Cool. And then, okay, just so we can see the tie actor. Then I'm going to pick my ring skin, and that's basically it. Now that we have the tie actor in here, we can start setting up some logic. So the tie actor is referencing our ring skin, and then the skin is referencing all of these separate components as bone objects, basically. Cool. So now that we have that set up, I can go ahead and I'm just going to toss this tie actor on our zero layer, and I can hide the ring layer for now, so we don't need to see that. I'll make my zero layer active, and then I'm going to turn back on my outer torus. Cool. There's a couple other things we have to do to set up the sim. So basically what we have to do first is we have to create a spline using this shape, and that's basically going to give us something to spawn or to birth all of the rings onto. So I'm just going to go ahead and clone this as a copy. So clone the knot, and then I'm going to go Alt Q to isolate this specific clone, and then I'm going to set my size to be 3 and then shrink it way down. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but this is just a pretty quick and dirty way. You toss an edit poly modifier on there, and you select your edges. And then if I just double click on any edge, or if you click on one edge and then shift click on another, you'll select the whole ring. And I'm going to go ahead and create shape. Cool. And then I could just delete that. And then if I do a wireframe override, I can see my shape in there. So that's cool. That's what I want. So what I want to do now is I don't necessarily want the rings to be populated along the entire loop. So what I could do is probably just like grab some of it just for now, and then we'll just delete it. So it's an open loop. That's kind of what we want. I've had some issues in the past with populating assets along a path that's a closed path and getting them to line up with their siblings. So that's what just a little quick trick. I've just opened up the loop. Being that we don't necessarily want them to spawn evenly along the entire thing, it doesn't really matter to us. We'll just have it open. So I'll go ahead and create a TyFlow object in the scene. I'll pop this guy open. Okay. So now, first thing we're going to want to do is to do a birth spline. And I'll pick our spline shape. Set this to display geometry. And then in my birth spline operator, let's change this to something like 0.5%, something like that, so we could see all of the, and now we can start to see the little dots that show up. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is toss in a rotation operator. And we'll set this to surface align. And we'll select our we'll select the inner spline. And we'll play with that in a second. What we'll do now is we'll just toss in our an actor operator in here. And we will select our TyActor, add selected. Cool. I can turn off display geometry. And now from here, we could adjust this a little bit. We don't want that many of them, so maybe we'll just do like this many. Just play around with it. Cool. And our rotation surface align is working, so that's cool. So we turn that off. That's what we're looking at. So basically that just orients them along the spline. So that's cool. And then from here, what we could do is I'm just going to grab our TyFlow object and play with some settings in here. So under physics, I'm going to turn off ground collider and keep default gravity to -1 for now. All right, cool. And then what we can do is grab the outer ring and then maybe just make this a little bit thicker. That's cool. And we can change it to 20 sides. We want it to just be nice and smooth. That'll work. All right, cool. So continue on with our TyFlow logic here. Let's toss in a physics shape. And we're going to convert all of the actors to physics shapes. Turn that off. And we're going to bind all of those actors together. So we're going to use physx-bound. We're going to bind glue. We're going to use rigid glue. And we'll just go ahead and leave all these settings the way they are for right now. And then we'll do a physics collision. And we'll pick the outer ring. And then you see what happens here. They kind of blow apart like that. So we don't want that to happen. So basically, the physics collision is applying a convex hull type to the outer ring. So if we display the hull, that's what we're working with here. So it's treating it as one huge, like a massive shape. And we want to set it to the mesh hull type, and that'll give us a nice clean hull around the outer ring of the torus knot. So we can turn off display hull. So that'll be cool. So at this point, it should be working. Yep, and they kind of just dangle there. So what we want to do is under the physics shape and under dynamics, set the restitution kind of high. Maybe we'll set it to like 0.5, and then static friction, we'll just remove that. Dynamic friction, we'll remove that. And then under the collider, we'll do the same thing. We'll do like 0.5 and 0, 0. And that should allow it to kind of more freely kind of like slide along that ring, and then they hit each other, and that's looking pretty nice. That's kind of what we want. So that's cool. And we can play with that a little bit more. You can see they're like a little bit jiggly. So maybe we can even set this a little bit higher. Maybe it's like 0.8. 0.8. The restitution. So that's getting pretty smooth. All right. And you can even increase our step size a little bit or something if we want to, but we'll play with that a little bit later on. So now what we want to do, now this works pretty well. We have the rings following the outer path, and they kind of slide along. So under the main settings tab under time step, we can set that to like half frame, and that smooths things out a little bit. So I'll kind of cache this out a little bit more. It's looking a little smoother. And then once they reach the bottom or they reach a particular point, we can play with the physics a little bit. So I think what I might do is set up like some kind of dummy collider, like a cylinder. Maybe I'll just draw a cylinder in here. And what I want to do is whenever the rings hit the cylinder, I'll just go ahead and zero this out. Whenever they touch that cylinder or they inside the cylinder, then maybe they're affected by another force, right? So under object properties, I'll go ahead and check off renderable, and then I'll do display as a box. So that's going to be our trigger cylinder. Cool. And then I'm going to create, maybe like I'll create like a vortex or something. So under helpers, under TyFlow, I'll do TyVortex. And we'll kind of toss that in here, and I'll zero that out as well. And then maybe as soon as they hit that, I want them to go counterclockwise, because then they'll go up. They'll go up the middle helix, if that makes sense. So I'll set this to counterclockwise. I'll kind of just leave the settings the way they are for right now. And then we'll bring back our TyFlow panel, and we'll do I'll do like a surface test. And then we'll pick our cylinder, our trigger cylinder. And then if it's inside that volume, then what we want to do is apply a force. And what I'll do is copy our physics collision operator. I'll just toss that in here, paste this instance. And then under force, I'm going to go ahead and pick our vortex, TyVortex. And then we can play with the settings in a second. So we'll toss that in there. Okay, cool. So anytime they're inside of that, the force takes over and they're being pushed upward. Cool. So you can tell it's working. It's just not strong enough. So maybe we'll change this to like 0.8. Cool. Awesome. So now they kind of fall down. They slide down the outer rings. And then as soon as they hit, I'll kind of extend this out a little bit. Under my time configuration, I'll put this to be 300 frames. Cool. And as soon as they hit that cylinder, then the TyVortex pushes them all the way up. Boom. And then as soon as they leave, then regular old gravity takes over, and then they fall back down the outer rings. Okay, and then the last step is to add in some color variation and materials. So I'll just toss in a material ID operator. I'll set this to random, and we'll create a couple random materials. So what I'll do is a multi-sub-object material, discard the old one. And what I'll do is I'll set this up for FStorm. So if you're following along and you have FStorm and you use this particular rendering engine, I'll set up some like really quick render settings. So in our kernel settings, I'll set our light samples to 12, max step to 24, and noise threshold to 001. And let's Do under tools, convert scene to FStorm. Cool. And just real quick, maybe I'll just toss in a HDRI map. Okay, and then I'll set this to a spherical environment and set the gamma to 2.2. All right, cool. Anyway, back to we'll close out our render settings. We don't need those right now. And then back to our material. So we have our multi-sub-object material set up, and I'll do an standard FStorm material. And I'll set this one to be like blue. And we'll increase the reflectivity a little bit. Set this to like 0.75. I'll copy that one down. Set this to be like a peach color. And then maybe a red, pink, salmon. And we'll name this rings. Set my number to 3. And then I will grab our TyFlow objects and just go ahead and apply this. Cool. And then from here, being that it's all fully procedural, you can add in however many rings you want. And that's pretty much it. So I can even cache this out if we want to. So if you want to go to export particles, you could toss one of these operators in here and do tycache, and then I'll set it to 0 to 300 is fine, and then I'll just pick a place to put the cache. So I just like made a folder for the cache. I'll save the cache here, and then let's see. Go ahead and generate tycache files. Okay, now that we have our tycache export complete, go ahead OK, and then I'll right click in the canvas here and I'll do disable flow, and we'll get rid of that. So now we have that all nice and cached out. We can kind of play it and see how it works. And our time configuration, make sure playback is set to real time, and you can go ahead and just play it. So it's like this perpetual loop, which is pretty fun to watch. What I might do is just, if I were to rebuild the cache, I'd probably just slow it down a little bit, because it kind of like flies around really fast. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And then to continue with some like simple render settings, what I might do is make a chrome material for the outer torus knot. So set that to chrome, and set the diffuse color to black, reflection to like nearly white, glossy to like 0.85, and IOR to like 10. And I'll go ahead and apply that. And then we'll toss in a camera just real quick. Something like that. Set this to be our camera. Default shading. Show safe frames. And then I can grab my target and move it up a little bit. And then maybe you could play with, like, you could put a path constraint on the camera and have it like rotate around. Just maybe that'll be a little bit more interesting. So let's go ahead and do that. So under splines, under circle, toss in a circle in there and zero that one out. And then under the motion tab, with our camera selected, go to assign controller, select position, and check this little assign controller checkbox, and then do path constraint. Okay, and then add path under the path parameters, and assign it this circle, and then that way it'll be bound to the circle, and then I can probably just move that circle up. That way my camera will always be bound to that. Maybe I'll do something like that. So that's pretty cool. Has kind of an interesting effect. Okay, so from here, maybe we'll just toss in a quick background and finalize some render settings, and then we'll be good to go. So toss in a background plane in here, and then I might do let's do a matte background, and we'll just check this little matte box, and I'll apply that to the floor, and we'll toss in a couple quick lights in here. Disk. So I'll toss in one disk light here. Raise it up. And this is just going to be really quick and dirty for the sake of the tutorial. Maybe I'll add a secondary light back here. Something like that might be good. And then I'll set this to not visible, and I'll set this one to like 4, and then this will be a primary light which will be visible, but it'll be just higher up, so you can't see it in the camera. And I'll set this one to like 10 maybe. All right, cool. So then we have that set up. I'm going to go back into render settings, and under kernel settings I'm going to go process alpha, and then that'll just get rid of the background. And then from here what we could do is real quick, I have to, in our TyCache, if we don't do this, it won't show up in the rendering. So under render, choose meshes. Okay. Okay, and I was gonna scrub this around a little bit, and then under interactive render, we'll just check it out. Cool. Now we could play with the lighting a little bit, and then maybe some of the materials. But that's looking pretty cool. And if I uncheck in my kernel settings the alpha, you'll see the background, the HDRI background, which, you know, if you want that, great. If you don't, you can get rid of it. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope you guys found this to be helpful, or you know, just something fun to do with TyFlow. Um, Using concave shapes is a little bit tricky, but there's just ways around it, especially with doing something, you know, rather simple like this. But just know that using the skin modifier and just kind of breaking up a mesh is an option, and then you know, binding the pieces back together using TyFlow later will help you do concave you know, physics shapes like these little donuts here. So yeah, if you guys like the tutorial, please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for watching.